Right. So today our focus will be on essay writing. This is your second task in the writing module for IELTS. So essentially, before we start the essay writing section, we will have a brief idea on the writing section. Right. In IELTS writing section, IELTS general, if you look at it, there are two writing tasks. The first task is your letter writing, wherein you will be asked to write either a formal or an informal letter. You will be given 20 minutes to complete the task, right? The second task is your essay writing, and our focus will be on that today, right? And you would spend 40 minutes for this task, right? So overall, you are
Okay.
given 1 hour.
Total 60.
Yes, 60 minutes, 1 hour to complete, and you have an overall timer. You don't have any, sectional timer for IELTS writing. Overall, you are given 1 hour. Within 1 hour, you're supposed to complete both the tasks, right? Now, uh, before we look at, you know, how to write the essay, we're going to look at certain, tips and strategies on how to approach the writing task, right? How to plan the essay, how to brainstorm for ideas. So idea generation is very important, right? We'll also be looking at you know how to improve your writing skills, especially your grammar and your vocabulary is something that we will be looking at, right? So uh, IELTS writing task, uh, essentially you have a word limit. You're supposed to write somewhere between, I would say, at least 250 words, right? uh, Anything less than 250 words, you will be penalized for your structure, uh, and anything more than 300 is also not advisable. So your essay should be somewhere between 250 to 270 words ideally, right? And when we look at the essay question type, here we need to understand IELTS gives you uh, a topic of general interest, right? So the topic could be from, uh, you know, anything, right? It could be from anything based on society, maybe let's say any topic which has some sort of social relevance, right? So maybe to give you an example, you come across topics uh, which are based on, let's say, global warming and its negative effects, or how to control, emission of pollution, or about population explosion, right? Or about learning a language, or it could be, so it could be any topic which has some sort of social significance or social relevance, right? So the first and foremost thing when we look at the IELTS writing task is the candidate is expected to have uh, kind of a good general awareness, and also the fact that he or she should be able to express his ideas effectively. So your language skills also matters a lot, right? Especially if you're looking for a band 8 and above, two things are important: your ideas and your language. If you're able to express your ideas in good language with good vocabulary and variety of sentence structure, I'm sure you're going to get a good band score, right? So as I told you earlier, one way to approach IELTS writing tasks to generate ideas is, indulge yourself in a lot of reading, right? Reading can come from, it could be anything. Let's say you can start reading, any. anything like, let's say, fiction or even a non-fiction or even a journal or article from a magazine, editorials. It could be anything, right? You could read anything and everything that uh, you know that you can get, and that is going to have a huge positive impact on your writing skills, right? It's going to uh, see, someone who writes well is someone who reads well, right? So this gets along. So if I am looking uh, to do well on the writing section, it's mandatory that I should have a kind of a reading skills that is going to help me a lot. So we have devoted some sessions on how to improve on your reading skills, especially on the reading module. I'll be covering that, and wherein we'll try to look at some articles and how to brainstorm for ideas. So obviously that is something for a different section. Now today our focus will be more on the writing task 2. So when we look at the IELTS essay, the essays can be classified into four sections or four types, I would say. You have your opinion essay, you have your discussion essay, you have your advantage disadvantage essay, you have your problem and solution essay. So these are the four types of essays. So let's understand what are the different types and how to approach these types of essays. So uh, essentially, when I look at an opinion essay, as the term suggests, you're given a question and you're asked to give your opinion on the topic, right? So essentially, as the examiner goes through your task, he will try and identify your opinion. So essentially, your opinion has to be very explicit. So he will be looking for that, right? You have to clearly specify. I strongly believe, global warming has a lot of negative effects. Uh, so use phrases and words which convey your opinion. That's mandatory in an opinion essay, right? Now, apart from that, you also need to make sure that you're able to convince the examiner by giving relevant examples, reasons, and evidence, right? So it's not just your opinion, it's about how well you're able to convince the examiner with reasons, examples, and evidence. So uh, now opinion essay, again, you have the liberty of either you can support the given point, or even you can oppose the given point, or in fact even you can take kind of a very balanced approach, right? You can even take a neutral stand, I would say, right? So you can talk about positives, you can talk about negatives, and then you can sum up with a kind of a neutral opinion as well. So it's not about your take on the subject, it's about how well you're able to convince the examiner. So as an examiner, right, I will be looking at your essay from um, you know the point whether you're able to uh, you know whether you're able to put across your ideas effectively, right? Are you able to use right words in right context? Are you able to frame grammatically correct sentence? And is it a logically coherent argument, right? Does it make sense? Now let's say, to give you an example, let's say when you talk about poverty, right? Or let's say you talk about unemployment rate in developing countries. Now, if you're able to come up with some sort of statistical data, so let's say if I were to give a data about unemployment in my essay, I would write that unemployment has reached all-time high, right, in India, if you compare it with the past 40 years, right? So, or if I were to talk about population explosion, right? I would give the example of India or a China, right? China has 1.5 billion population, whereas India has 1.35 billion population. Now, how much effect, right? How does it affect the economy, right? Essentially, you have more population, which is going to have a huge negative impact on the economy, right? Government struggles to, uh, you know, put food on the plate for each and every individual. Poverty increases, right? Economic development, takes a beating. So essentially, uh, any essay for that matter, if I am able to come up with my perspective on the subject, right, it's going to add value to my response. That is where your reading habit comes into play, right? So if, as I told, if you have the habit of kind of reading a Times of India or a Hindu on a regular basis, just like 30 minutes of reading is good enough for you to get a very general perspective, because most of these topics uh, are general, and you might require kind of a general awareness. So so what you need to understand here is your how will you put across your argument, right? How convincing your argument is, and what are the examples that you're able to provide, right? Now, examples. For these global questions about a poverty or an unemployment or a malnutrition, or about any general topic, your knowledge or your reading habit is going to have a huge impact. So that's my point. Now, moving to discussion essay. Now, discussion essay is a bit different from opinion essay, in the sense um, you need to discuss both the sides of an argument before you, come up with opinion, right? So, in a discussion essay, you don't need to give your opinion until and unless they have specifically asked for your opinion, right? If, if they have asked for your opinion, yes, you have to give your opinion. Otherwise, you just need to discuss both the sides of an argument. So, I've given you an example, right? Just look at this example. It says, is economic development necessary to reduce poverty, or should economic growth be stopped as it is damaging the environment? Discuss both the sides. So now, if I were to brainstorm for ideas, right, I would think about how growth in an economy is helping to, reduce poverty line, reduce the number of people who are below poverty line, right? So if I were to discuss this topic, right, I would start by discussing economic development, right? How would you um, rate economic development, right? What are the parameters which are used to check growth in an economy, right? If I were to look at it, I would uh, write about, let's say, GDP growth, right? GDP is nothing but gross domestic product, which adds up to the total value of goods and services in an economy, right? So I might talk about how GDP growth reflects the growth of the economy, and how it is able to reflect the standards of economic standards of people, right? And I'll also talk about how um, a growth in an economy is able to help to reduce poverty. So if I have growth in my economy, right, government will be able to provide more number of
Absolutely
jobs.
true.
Yeah, they will
Correct.
provide more number of jobs. So people who are unemployed, right, gets job, and unemployment rate reduces drastically, right? Poverty reduces dramatically, right? So that is how I would go about it, by giving data and evidence to support my point. On the other hand, right, I might also discuss about how growth in an economy is having a negative impact on the environment, right? So let's say, imagine you have a country booming, right? People are getting more number of employment opportunities. Uh, Government is allowing more number of companies to operate, right?
Then
So obviously,
always
yes, right. These factories and manufacturing units emits, effluents, and these effluents are thrown out to the environment. Like, right, rivers get affected, ponds get affected, oceans get affected. Right now, Bangalore is a perfect example, right? I hope you are
yes.
aware of, Bellandur Lake.
Parental lake. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah. So that's just how much effluent has been thrown out. Now, in fact, after the whole coronavirus stuff, right? I
Yes.
read one of the articles which says that the pollutants have
Everest and
reduced a
Himalaya.
lot. Yeah, pollutants have reduced a lot in Bellandur Lake after the whole coronavirus, because factories are
Correct.
no longer working, right? So environment is clean.
There are few places where, like in 200-kilometer distance and 180-kilometer distance, people can see the Mount Everest and Himalaya.
Right, right. So
That's how.
yeah, so maybe you can give all these examples. Even these localized examples are perfectly okay, right? Um, see, don't think that you have to give always a very global example, right? No problem. You can give examples from your local, societies, what you have come across, right? What you have read about it. Just furnish more examples based on that. So as I told you, in a discussion essay, you need to discuss both the sides, right? How economic growth is reducing poverty on one hand, and what are the negative impacts on the environment. That is the other side. So you basically you devote one para for one view, the other para for the other view. So basically, you need two body paragraphs, right? And then you will have a conclusion that's a separate para, and you also require an introduction. So I will be explaining the structure of the essay. So I will clarify how to like introduce the topic, how to go about body, and how would you conclude, right? Um, Now the third aspect is advantage disadvantages. Now in an advantage disadvantage essay, essentially you are given a topic wherein you have both pros and cons, right? You have positives and negatives, and you need to write, right, what are the advantages and what are the disadvantages, right? Does advantage outweigh disadvantage or the other way around, right? So let's look at one sample example. International student exchange would benefit all school students. Do its advantage outweigh disadvantage? Now if I were to look at this question, right, uh, one thing which I would notice here is this is a topic wherein I have both pros and cons, right? So again, you need to make sure that your essay is very balanced, right? Don't uh, don't have an essay which is highly skewed into one in a view, right? Please don't have it. Always have a very balanced approach, and examiners prefer an essay which is quite balanced. So
Okay.
in this question, if I were to look at this question, if I were to look at the pros of this question, right? What are the advantages of a student exchange program, right? And I'm sure you would have heard about this term, a student exchange program, especially if you look at higher education sector,
Exactly.
right? Especially when you're looking at MBA programs and all, right? You have something called a student exchange program, wherein a student completes his first year in a particular country, and then he goes into another country, right, and completes his education over there, right? Even the if you look at most of these MBA programs, like let's say an ISB, right, or even if you look at Lara, you have something called Global Management Program, right? Now, for all these MBA programs, right, you have this option of studying 1 year abroad. So what are the positives here? Positives are essentially the student gets lot more exposure, right? He gets, you know, I would say cross cultural knowledge. He would learn, you know, different culture, tradition, language, right? Obviously, if he is a person who started working, he would also learn, you know, the business environment, let's say in a European country, right? How it is different from Asian countries like India. So essentially, a student exchange program is going to have a lot of positive effect on student who gets a kind of a global exposure. Now, what are the disadvantages? Right now, disadvantage I would say, right? Obviously, students who, you know, who want to migrate to another country, right, for higher education or for work purpose, right? If they want to immigrate to another country, the country, you know, who is the motherland of the student, right? Who's gonna lose this valuable resource, I would say, right? We call it as brain drain, right? People who move out of their home country uh, are basically, you know, the
If they find good opportunity over there, then they
exactly,
might stay.
exactly. The home country loses, right? So that is a negative effect. So maybe you can talk about both positives and negatives here, and then you have your problem solution essay, wherein you are given a problem and you're supposed to put some practical solutions on the problem. Now, just look at this example. Natural resources such as oil, forests, and fresh water are being consumed at an alarming rate. What are the problems? And give some solutions for it. So if I were to look at this question, right? Now this is a question wherein again you can show your general awareness, right? Now this is a question which is asking you uh, the fact that uh, oil, water, you know, all these natural resources, we call it as you know, non-renewable resources, right? Which mean
Huh?
non-renewable resources. You know what it
Yes.
is? Yeah.
Yes, yes,
Yeah,
understood.
non-renewable resources are those resources which cannot be renewed.
Cannot be.
Yeah, it would get depleted one day or the other. So how would you solve this problem, right? How would you, um, um, what happens if these non, you know, non-renewable resources gets exhausted one day or one point, right? Obviously, people will have to look at alternate methods, right? Maybe a solar power or a wind power, right? Now we know about, you know, petroleum, right, which is already reached its peak, right?
Correct.
OPEC countries have, you know, raised the oil price too much. Now we are going to reach, we have already reached peak oil, right? Wherein these countries may not be able to produce more oil, right? They've already attained their, you know, pinnacle. So obviously, these companies will have to look at alternate source of energy like wind power, solar power, right? So you can talk about, you can write about these aspects, how a solar energy or a wind energy is is going to be the new norm for the
Electronics.
years coming generation.
That's
Right?
the thing.
Perfect. Now let's look at the scoring criteria. So this slide mainly focuses on the four aspects which the British Council looks at from a student. The first one is your task response. Now, essentially, in a task response, the examiner is going to check uh, whether you have written an essay on the topic or have you moved away from the topic. So if you have moved away from the topic, you lose marks in this criteria. So make sure that you don't go away from the topic. Address all the aspects related to the question, right? So if the essay is asking you to, you know, discuss a particular subject, you need to make sure that you, you know, write both positives and negative, right? You discuss all the sides of a point. And if the essay is asking you to give your opinion, please make sure that you give your opinion, right? Say that I strongly believe this is the case. So make sure that you don't lose marks in task response. Now, the second aspect is your coherence and cohesion. Now, a coherence and cohesion is nothing but the examiner is going to check your structure, right? He's going to check the structure of your essay. Like when I talk about structure of the essay, I mean introduction, body, and conclusion. So every essay, irrespective of the type of essay, right? Irrespective of opinion or a discussion or a problem solution essay, you need to introduce the topic by giving a very general sort of information, right? And then you also have to explain all the key points in the body, and then finally you will conclude, right, by summarizing the whole set of ideas. And you also have to develop the points which you have explained in the body by giving relevant examples and evidences, right? So your introduction, body, conclusion, mandatory. Especially in IELTS, one para you should devote for introduction, two separate para for your body, like body one and body two, and then you need to have a final conclusion. So if you do this, you will be given good marks in coherence and cohesion. You also need to make sure that you use right transition words, right? So what are transitional words? Transitional words are nothing but words which either extend an idea or show a contrast in idea. So if I were to extend an idea, I would use words like moreover, furthermore, in addition to, right? I use these words to extend my idea, right? Or if I want to, structure my points, I would use words like firstly, secondly, finally. I use these set of words, and I also make sure that I, give examples which are relevant to the point, right? So examples are very important, but make sure that your examples are to the point. It has to be relevant. Just for the sake of giving examples, you're not supposed to give examples, right? You need to give relevant examples and reasons and evidences to support your point. And finally, it's all about the number of words as well. So when I look at the structure of the essay, I will also be looking at uh, the fact that whether you are able to write 250 words or not. Is it fewer than 250 words, or is it more than 250 words? So you are expected to write somewhere between I would say 250 to 270 words is ideal in IELTS. And I would suggest one more point here, which has nothing to do with this particular scoring criteria. See, a lot of times what happens is students think that they should write the whole essay in the given paper itself, right? And what happens is they end up not asking for that one extra sheet, right? So if you're opting for a paper pencil test, now if you feel that you need one more sheet of paper to write, please ask. They are more than happy to give you, right? So don't, uh, you know, uh, I mean, here you have to act pretty smart, right? If you feel that, okay, I have not written enough, right? Let me go and ask a piece of paper and, write more points, just elaborate more if you feel so. Now, the third aspect is your lexical resource. This is nothing but your vocabulary, right? So, IELTS examiners are very particular about the fact that, especially someone who's looking for a higher band, like a band 8 and above, need to use variety of words to convey the message. So, please make sure that you don't repeat words, right? Try to use synonyms as much as possible, right? So, if I were to look at the word environment, right? Now, when I talk about global warming, right, this is a word which I use a lot of time, right? Environment. So, So what are the synonyms that I can use? Instead of environment, I can use words like, let's say, a biosphere or an ecosystem, right? Or a surrounding, you know, or ambience. Try to use words which convey similar set of meaning, right? So use synonyms. That is going to add, you know, huge value. And you know, and variety of sentence structure, right? That's the last point, right? Grammatical range and accuracy, wherein especially since you're looking for a higher band score, you need to make sure that you use you know, compound sentence, complex sentence, right? Not just simple sentences. Simple sentences are not going to fetch you a band-aid. A compound and a complex sentence is going to help you to get that score range. Now, each of these criteria, if you look at it, takes 25% of the total marks, which means 25% for task response, 25% for coherence and cohesion, 25% for lexical resource, and the last 25% goes to your grammatical range and accuracy. So these are the four marking criteria which you have to be thorough with, right? Uh, Now, if I were to look at sentence structure, right? Before that, we will be looking at some more points on, you know, the essay. So just look at this structure of uh, essay, right? So now this slide focuses on the structure of the essay, wherein you have introduction. So the first para, you are going to introduce the topic. Now, how are you going to do it? You are going to paraphrase both the sides of the argument, and then you clearly state which side you will be supporting. So basically, paraphrasing is nothing but you take ideas from the question and then you frame sentences based on that idea. So the sentences have to be your own, but the ideas can be taken from the question stem. And you also need to make sure whether you support or oppose or take a neutral stand, right? You can explain that point in the introduction. And in the body
Example.
paragraph, sorry,
Give me an example, like.
yes. So to give you an example, so if I were to look at this particular question, right? Anyways, we will be looking at one or two questions today, so you'll get a lot more clarity. So if I were to look at this question, right? The question says the crime rate among teenagers has increased dramatically in many countries. Discuss some possible reasons for this increase and suggest some solution. Yeah. So if I were to introduce this topic, I would start by saying that um, you know uh, there has been quite an increase in the number of crime rates among teenagers over the past 2 decades across the globe, and there are various factors which contribute to the increase in crime rate. I will be discussing these factors and also will be giving some solutions for these problems. This is how you would introduce the topic. You just need to take idea from the question, right? Paraphrase it, just give a very general idea, and then you explain it by giving your opinion. So it has to be 2 to 3 lines, not more than that. So I will be explaining that when we will do a real question. Right now, I'm just running through the structure of the essay. Now, the body of the paragraph. Now, each of the body paragraph, you should come up with one supporting detail, and then you should give a reason and an example to support your point. So let's say if I have two body paragraph, I need to have two supporting details and reasons and examples. And then finally, I would conclude by summarizing the major points, which were discussed in the body paragraph. This is how I would conclude my essay. So
Do we need to write that like conclusion, then we should start the paragraph, or it's nothing like that? We can just continuously write the paragraph.
you're talking about conclusion, right?
Yes.
Yeah, conclusion. Yes, you need to write like in conclusion or to summarize. You should use that word. You should use
Okay.
that phrase, right? When you make your first point, you would write like firstly or first of all, right? Firstly, I believe there are a lot of negative aspects associated with population explosion. So you just make a point and then you give a reason and example in the body. Hmm? So you need to use, so these are called transition words. You have to use transition words. Yes. So let's look at some more points before we, approach a real question. Now, here, the first point, which is very important, is as I mentioned earlier, irrespective of the type of essay, you should come up with some sort of examples and evidence. So examples and evidence could be any, it could be any factual information which you can furnish from your reading habit, or it could be even some sort of experiences that you had from your life. You can share that as well, right? Now, and please make sure that you use formal academic language, right? So I've given you one or two examples over here. Now, if I were to mention, if I were to say that I'm quite relaxed, right? So I should use the word relaxed, not that I'm chilling, right? Chilling is a very informal English, right?
Okay, got it.
So try to avoid informal English as much as possible. Use formal academic language and don't use bullet points, right? This is not a PPT. This is a formal academic essay. So do not use bullet points in your essay. No headings, no subheadings, right? Variations of sentence structure, simple, compound, and complex. Very important, right? And paraphrasing, it's a very good tool. Just now we discussed how to introduce the topic, right? So in an introduction, please paraphrase the question stem. Paraphrasing is nothing but taking ideas from question and framing sentences on your own. That's called paraphrasing. And always keep 2 to 3 minutes at the end to check for your spelling, grammar, and vocabulary. So ideally, you are not going to write for 40 minutes, right? You're going to spend, initially, you're going to spend some 2 to 3 minutes to plan for your essay, right? And finally, after writing the essay, also, you're going to spend some 2 to 3 minutes to check for your spelling, grammar, punctuation, vocabulary, right? So you are going to spend what? Um, you know, 30 to 35 minutes max for writing. The remaining 5 to 6 minutes you're gonna spend for planning and checking for spelling, grammar, and all.
Correct.
So proofreading that has to happen at the end. Now, if you're opting for a
I
paper
believe
pen,
that's enough
yeah,
time.
sorry,
I believe that's enough time, like
yeah,
40
in
minutes.
yeah in IELTS you have enough time, right? 40 minutes is more than enough for you to write an essay, and you just need to write a 250 word essay. It's not too big, right? Now, handwriting very important, right? If you're opting for a paper pencil test, handwriting is very important in the sense you should not make too many strikes, too many don't erase something and rewrite on top of it. Those are, you're giving very wrong and bad impression on the examiner if you rub it and then keep on writing something on top of it, right? Avoid all those, right? If you can do all those in your rough sheet but not on the exam paper. And
But paper-based and computerized, both options are there, right?
yes, you have both the options, either paper pencil or a computer based test. So if you're opting for a computer-based test, obviously this is something which you can easily avoid, right? There is no question of correcting your this one response. You can always delete it, right? You can use your backspace so that you can delete it and then you can write
Correct.
it again. Okay, so so let's look at one um, sample essay, right? Let's look at this question. I just want you to go through this question first.
The crime rate among teenagers has increased dramatically in many countries. Discuss some possible reasons for this increase and suggest solution. Solution.
Right?
Yes.
Cool. So now the first thing here, when I'm given a question, is I need to understand the question by looking at the keywords, right? If I were to look at this question, one of the keywords is crime rate among
Crime rate.
teenagers. Yeah, crime rate among teenagers. The other keyword is increase, dramatically. So these are the two keywords that I'm looking at. So I use these keywords to, brainstorm for ideas, right? So you need to jot down some points on a piece of paper before you actually start putting pen on your paper. And you also might have to go through, uh, you know, the question stem, which clearly asks you what to do. Now, this question says discuss some possible reasons for this increase and suggest some solutions, right? Um,
Yes.
so essentially, this, even though it's asking you to discuss a topic, if you look at it, this has given you a problem, and this is asking you to give a solution. So you have to come up with some sort of
Reason
practical
of the
solution.
problem and suggestion.
Yes, yes. You have to come up with some sort of practical solutions as well. And it also says give reasons for your answer and include any relevant examples from your own experience or knowledge. The last line, right? So it is asking you to give examples from your own experience or knowledge. So the first part is you're going to brainstorm for ideas using the keywords. Now, how are you going to do it? You're going to do it by following a procedure. This is called developing focus questions. So what is a focus question? Focus question is going to help you to write an essay which has all the relevant points by asking focus questions on these keywords. So what are the possible questions that I can ask on these keywords, right? The first question I would ask maybe is why has teenage crime increased, right? What can be done about it? That would be my second question. So if I ask some question, I start getting some ideas, right? So if I were to
Correct.
ask, yeah, why has teenage crime increased, right? Maybe one of the possible reasons is, let's say there is a breakdown in family, right? So then you might ask, okay, why there is a breakdown in family? Maybe it could be due to increase in divorce rates, right? Or if I were to think even further, right? I might get points like, okay, these children, they don't have anything productive to do in their life, right? Or let's
Can
say,
poverty can be a
yes,
root cause?
yes, yes. Maybe it could be poverty, it could be unemployment, or it could be even the fact that there is no social values associated with these people, right? Let's say these they don't have any role models, for example, right? Let's say if when we talk about breakdown of families, essentially, which means these children live with a single parent, right? So obviously you don't have any fatherly figure who can guide you, right? So that could be one possible reason. So as you pose more number of questions, you get more number of ideas. And what can be done about it, right? Maybe the government can do something, or it could be even individuals. So maybe government can provide some sort of support to those families, or even they can, you know, have stringent punishment against those, you know, teenagers who commit, you know, let's say crime, even if they're juveniles. Maybe government can come up with very stringent laws so that it can deter them from committing further crimes in the future. So once you get these sort of ideas, right, and then you're going to extend these ideas by, you know, coming up with some sort of examples. uh, as I told you, you can furnish all those examples which you have read. Let's say when we talk about crime rate, I'm sure we would have read a lot of articles, we would have heard about a lot of stuff about crime rate in our locality, right, in our hometown, right? So maybe you can furnish all those ideas. So essentially, that is a stage. So when you write, this is where you have to develop your ideas. Now, at this point, we are only jotting down points, right? We haven't even started writing. Now, when we write, we need to come up with, you know, we have to develop those ideas. So, so if I were to ask, like, why has there been a breakdown in nuclear family, right? Uh, One possible reason could be there is high divorce rates, right? And if there is high divorce rate, what is the implication of it, right? Let's say you have a child living with, you know, one parent, let's say mother, right? So let's say he doesn't have his father to support him. So there is no role model for him, right? There is no fatherly figure. So that could be one reason why this child is committing a crime. So maybe you can elaborate on that one. So
And can be like both parents are working, like
yes, yeah,
they are not able to give
yeah, they're not able to
sufficient time
devote
to their.
quality time with their children. Yes, you're right. So so this is how you would, you know, approach essay question. Now, what I want right now is I want you to go through one sample response. I'll just show you. I'll give you 2 minutes. Go through the first two para, and then I'll show you the next two para. Please go through it now. Right? So
Yes.
let's look at the next para. Please read this.
Yes.
You've done right.
Yes.
Okay, so you got an idea how to approach
Yes.
the
Yes.
writing task.
Correct.
Hmm. So you clear with all the points, right? Any questions that you have in your mind regarding the essay?
No, not so far.
Not so far, right? So from most probably from next section onwards, we'll just start doing some more practice on writing, and I'm sure you'll get
Sure.
some more queries at that point. So as we do,
Correct.
more number of questions, we'll get more number of doubts as well. So I'll be clarifying those doubts when we do those questions. Cool.
Sure.
So we
Yeah.
are done for the day. So I'll just share this with you and the previous videos and PPTs as well. Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you.
please.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you so much, and let me know if you can catch up tomorrow
Yeah,
any time during
yeah.
the
I'll
day,
let you know about it. Thank
if
you.
possible. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.